1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay. Well, since you brought it up, we can talk about it. How did it how did it affect you? I mean, did it bother you that you tried a business like like buying a restaurant and then it didn't work out? I mean, how did that affect your business sense or how you felt about how other people saw you? I mean, did you consider yourself a failure for that? Or?
Well, at that moment, I felt I was a failure. Yes, I did. Well, in a way, I got kind of pushed into that. But of course, Helen will tell you that I wasn't pushed into it because she was dead set against it. And I kept arguing for it. But I was half-heartedly arguing for it. But anyhow, I finally convinced her, and when I convinced her, then we went ahead and made the purchase. But I knew nothing about restrooms, nothing. And neither did Carlos. Carlos, that was his name. Now, he didn't know anything about it. He sold milk, that's all. He was a milkman. But I think we could have made it if we had put our heart into it and really learned how to do it right, and studied other restrooms. We could have done it, but we weren't interested in it. We were just going through the motions, that's all. And then for a while we had a real nice old lady, a cook. She was motherly type, or grandmotherly type. Nicest woman you could think of. Anyhow, we needed a cook. And so she and her husband ran another restaurant in another part of town on Carlos's route. So he knew about her. So anyhow, he asked her whether she'd come up and work for us, and then maybe he could run it by himself down there because it was just a little place. And finally she said, yeah, she'd come up there and cook for us. So she did, and she was a good cook, and she did a great job. And but anyhow, along in the middle of the morning or something, she'd have to get something from the store. And so I'd give her some money, and she'd go and get it, and I don't know if they ever got change back or not. But anyhow, sometimes if I was busy doing something, she would just take some money out of the till and go over to the store with it. But anyhow, we found out that she was robbing us. That was a terrible surprise, because here we thought we had the salt of the earth there, but anyhow, they canned her. And the next guy we got in there was a ship's cook. It worked on ships,
Like in the Navy?
Yeah, in the Navy. Well, he wasn't in the Navy, but I mean,
just regular ocean liners.
yeah. Well, what's the other merchant marine type, And he was a good cook, but he couldn't tolerate me because I knew nothing. So I would be washing the dishes and doing all of the menial stuff around, which is fine. I didn't mind that because that's all I knew. And Helen was taking care of the front end, waiting on the people and so forth. And he was doing the cooking. And one day he had made a list of things that he needed. And so I said, I'll go downtown and get them. Well, I left about 11 o'clock, which was a mistake. I shouldn't, because the luncheon was coming up. And I took longer than I should, and I guess it was probably 1 o'clock before I got back. And I get back, and here this guy is throwing kettles around and everything else, and the sink is full of everything, and the place is full of people. And Helen's a nervous wreck because he's raising Cain with her, and he's mad because I'd left him with all this, he didn't have enough pots and pans. Everything was dirty and nobody to wash them, see? And so I saw the problem. The minute I got in there, I should have dipped into that sink and started doing my job. And after that, he says, look, he says, you better run your own restaurant. I've had all of it. I can handle it, you know. And I said, oh, okay. I was mad at him then too for embarrassing us in front of all these customers. But we had it coming, you know. But it's just ignorance. We didn't know. We didn't figure things out. He was really a nice guy, but had a temper.
Well, did after everything was said and done, and you went back to Davenport, I mean, did everybody know that you had done that? I mean, did everybody know that you had tried to get that you had a restaurant and?
Oh, I think, yeah, I think we told everybody. Yeah. We didn't keep it a secret. Am I moving around, getting out of your line of view there?
I'm keeping you wide.
Okay. No, we confessed all. But the thing, I came back, I remember coming back to Davenport, and I am just full of kudos for California. Boy, California was a heaven, you know. And nobody would care to listen to me, and I couldn't figure out why. Until finally it dawned on me, I'm overdoing it. I mean, people back there in the snow country and everything else, they don't want to hear this kind of stuff, you know.
They're probably thinking, if it's so great, then why did you come back?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, how did having kids fit into that whole scenario?
The kids?
Yeah.
Well, we only had one.
You said Joanne?
We only had one, yeah. Joanne. She was 35, 36. She was just a little over a year old. Yeah, she was a year and a month old when I left the band in October. She was born in September, 35. And but anyhow, she weathered the trip well. She did well. And but we had a little problem there too, because Helen was working, and I was working during the daytime, and then I'd go down to Tim's in the evening and things like that, and bone up on photography, you know. And also he had a couple of cronies that were musicians. Tim played the clarinet, and I played the guitar, and somebody else played something else, and anyhow we'd have a little jam session going down there, and among other things, and plus the fact that I was learning things. He was working down there too. But anyhow, we had to have somebody to take care of the kids, or take care of Joanne. And fortunately, there was the little bungalow we had. There was another little 2 or 3 bedroom adjunct to that bungalow. It was really a 2-family place, and a couple moved in there from L.A., I guess it was, or San Francisco. And she wasn't working. In fact, he wasn't working either, I don't think. But anyhow, they said that they would watch Joanne, you know, when we weren't there. So that settled that for us. And but anyhow, Joanne had Helen worked in a very nice place. It was called, why did I bring that up now? Because I can't think of the name. I don't know. It was in the Balboa Park, which is a big, gorgeous park they have there in San Diego. Right. The building was previous. They had a world fair there a couple of years previous, and these buildings were all put up there for the World's Fair. They were beautiful buildings. And this Casa del Rey Moray was the name of the place. And she made pretty good money there. She was always a good waitress. She always made good money. The second time we came to California, in '40, she got a job at the Brown Derby, which was the name restaurant in California, LA. And boy, she made a bundle down there. She was making more down there than I was making at Lockheed. In fact, she bought me a grand piano for a birthday present. It's the one that Bonnie has at her house now. Gull Bronson. It was a good piano. Still is a good piano.
Well, why don't you tell us what you did then while you were back in Davenport, in between the two times that you went to California?
Well, I tried to get a job in photography. And the first place I think I went was the newspaper. I wanted to be a newspaper photographer. I hadn't had any experience, but I figured, I always thought I could do anything. I could do anything.
Why did you want to, if you thought you could do anything, why the newspaper?
Well, because it had flair to it, adventure, you know, things like that. And so anyhow, I did get a job on the Democrat. There's two papers in Davenport, the Times, which is the bigger of the two, and the Democrat, which is a evening paper, which is a smaller paper. I got a job on the Democrat, and $25 a week and 5 cents a mile for my car, and the hours were unlimited. Anytime they wanted you, be ready.
Right.
And it often happened that way. You know, in the news breaks all 24 hours. You know, I got a lot of calls out in the night to get out there and get somewhere. But anyhow, I liked that very much. And I worked there for about a year, I guess, or maybe more. And then I got crosswise with the managing editor. And I got canned.
How did that happen?
I knew you would ask. Well, the guy's name was Vic Martin, and he's a big blowhard. He got his job by connections, you know, but he was managing editor of the Democrat. And so he always wanted me to do extra things for him, you know, shoot some pictures for him on the side, you know, as friends or parties and things like this. And I never got paid extra for it. Really. That was on me. Now one day he called and he said, I want you to cover this big party we're having at the Black Hawk Hotel tonight. And I said, okay. And so anyhow, I get down there and there's a drunken brawl. It was a mess. And so I was shooting, trying to get straight shots. I think I'm shooting for something for tomorrow's paper, you know. I can't have somebody snot nose running or fingers around, arms around somebody else's wife and things like that. But anyhow, he's standing right with him. Shoot that, shoot that. And here, he's some guy like this, you know, and a couple of broads in his arms. And everything like that he wanted me to shoot. And so I shot a few of them. Then I just left the slide in and just shot the bulb, you know. He made me think. That cost me my job. Because the next morning, he wanted all the pictures down there. I brought all the pictures down. And he says, where the hell is the picture of so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so? Where's this one? Where's all these pictures I told you to shoot? I said, well, Vic, I was afraid this morning you would wish I hadn't shot him, you know, because anything like that get around town. I mean, these are big people around town. And the next day I got my walking papers. So that's how I lost that. And then I went to work for the U.S. Engineering Department. That was, the U.S. engineers were building a series of locks and dams along the Mississippi River. The idea for that was to maintain a 9-foot water level all the way down the river so that they could have boats, you know, tow boats and everything else, go and use the river without fear of running aground somewhere. And so I worked with them off and on. I couldn't get, that was a civil service job. But I couldn't get civil service because they didn't have enough call for it. So they put me on a 90-day temporary. So I'd be 90-day temporary. Then I'd have to be off for a while. And then when they had a chance, they'd give me another 90-day temporary. So there were some pretty dry spells in our forest where we were pretty broke. And it's about that time that I started thinking about California again. You know, I thought if I'm going to be broke, I'd come out here. But
What did that, was, I'm sure, how does something like that affect your marriage?
well, I don't think it affected my marriage, or our marriage. One thing, Helen took the bad with the good. She really did. She's in there fighting all the way, along with me. In fact, she worked harder because she had, well, let's see, finally Nancy was born. She was born in '49 in May.
39.
39, yeah. 1 year before we came back to California. So she had 2 kids there, and she was waiting table, doing like that, and I'm working every chance I get. And if I could have worked steady, we'd have probably made it. But I'd work 90 days and then I'd be off for maybe 90 days, you know. And my uncle Hugo was a cement and brick contractor. He hired me too, off and on, to help him. He worked off and on. He's semi-retired. But whenever he had a job, he'd call me and I'd go to work for him. Hod carrying, mixing mortar, you know, and things like that. And but it wasn't a steady income, but every little bit helped. But those were the one thing about the Depression. Being poor, and everybody being poor, just brought out all of the good in everybody, because you're always helping somebody, or somebody's helping you, or it was great, really fine. And you had fun doing very inexpensive things. You know, have people come over and play cards or something, or play games, and nothing expensive, and nobody had any money.
So as for your own ego or pride or whatever, dignity or however you felt, it didn't matter that much that you were off and on working, because that's kind of how everybody was kind
Well,
of
everybody had that problem. Well, I wouldn't say everybody. There's a lot of people that had steady jobs, but there's a great many that didn't. Some didn't have any jobs. I scrounged around, and luckily I did. I got the job over at the clock tower, and on the 90 days I was working, I was making money. And you'll be surprised at how much money I made. Just a minute, I'll think of it. $1,100 a year.
Wow.
That's how much money I made at the clock tower. And that wasn't unusual. I mean, that wasn't unusually low. That's the way the things were.
Yeah.
$1,100 in a year.
Did you ever think about going back into the band?
No, I never did. I never thought of going back in the band, but I thought of going back to arranging, writing arrangements. I wrote all the arrangements for our band. And you know what I'm talking about when I say arrangements?
Yeah.
I liked that. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. And I did that a few times after I quit the band, just to keep in touch. I'd do it for nothing. There's one band down in two bands down in San Diego. In fact, I played on one band, a couple of jobs. I don't know what I played. I didn't have an instrument. But anyway, I wrote a few arrangements for them, and there was also a colored band down there that I wrote some arrangements for, just free, just to keep in practice. And
why didn't you wanna? Why did you not consider going back to the band when you knew you could make good money doing that?
well, I liked the money, but I didn't care about sitting up on the stand, working with the band, you know.